Okay, then we're going to start.
Let's start.
Okay, thank you all for being so patient with us. We're still learning how to use Zoom. We're going to be recording tonight's proceedings where it will be available online for future reference. I'm Sue Piper, chair of the Oakland Firesafe Council, which was formed in 2014 by 1991 fire survivors, former members of the Oakland's Wildfire Prevention Assessment District Advisory Committee, Oakland Wildlands Stewards, representatives of homeowner associations and neighborhood councils, and individuals with an interest in wildfire prevention. Our focus is on community outreach and education, such as tonight's program and our Oakland Community Preparedness and Response Program, and advocacy at the local, regional, state, and state level. We welcome you to tonight's third in a 5-part series of the Savvy Homeowner in our disaster-prone community, where we are focusing on defensible space and the upcoming annual fire department inspections for properties in Oakland located in the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI. Feel free to type in questions in the Q&A section of the webinar. We will feed them to Travis Hansen and Barbara Goldenberg at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, we'd like to start with a short video prepared by the Oakland Fire Department to introduce you to defensible space.
Last year's North Bay fires reminded us how devastating fire can be. For your protection and those surrounding you, there are 11 fire stations located within the designated Very High Fire Severity Zone. Each year, Oakland Fire Department personnel complete approximately 21,000 residential inspections. Annual inspections begin in May. 30 days after the first inspection, Fire Department personnel will return to properties that were not compliant. Because we know that preparation is the best prevention, your property is required to be maintained year-round. Here is how you can do your part to keep your home and loved ones safe. Defensible space regulations are designed to create and maintain a buffer around your home that can slow or stop an advancing fire. If every property owner creates and maintains defensible space between each home and parcel, our community becomes a much safer place to live.
We're not asking you to remove your ornamental vegetation that's irrigated, alive, and maintained. We're not asking you to cut down trees. As long as they're alive, again, irrigated, maintained, they're okay. What we're asking you to do is to remove that feral vegetation, those seasonal weeds, grasses, and brush from your property. We're trying to eliminate those fuel ladders that will transfer fire from the ground into the tree canopy and through radiant and conductive heat to your homes.
Here are some of the things you can do to create a defensible space around your home. Limbing up and pruning back trees.
For pruning and limbing trees on residential properties is that the trees be cut at least 1/4 the height of the tree or a minimum of 6 feet. That eliminates the possibility of ladder fueling and heat transfer from ground level fire into tree canopy. Tree branches shall be pruned away from the horizontal roof line, that's the gutter line, within 10 feet vertically above. By doing that, there's no radiant or conductive heat transfer. Exceeding that 10-foot minimum is the best practice.
Keep chimney and stovepipe outlets clear.
When your tree is pushing the stovepipe outlet to the side, it's gone on far too long. I'm amazed we haven't had a fire. Plus, look, the tree is overhanging the roof line within what? 10 feet, right? All needs to be pruned back.
Keep rooftops clear of debris.
Wildland fires, they're consuming vegetation, they're consuming brush, they're consuming leafy matter. The winds pick up, they start throwing ash and embers, and they can carry up to 2-3 miles even away. And if your rooftop, like this one on this building, is covered in pine needles, any ember lands on that, that whole roof is going in a matter of seconds. We need to all be conscious that fuel accumulates there and clear weeds and leaves and leaf litter debris from our gutters and our roof lines.
Pulling or cutting brush.
It's recommended that seasonal weeds and grasses and invasive brush like this here be cut and removed from the property and maintained at a height of 6 inches or less. In doing so, you're reducing the opportunity for a fire to spread by reducing the fuel load. If a fire does occur on the property with vegetation at that level, the flame length is not significant enough to transfer heat and flame into the tree canopy. That makes our whole community safer.
Removing debris and dead or dying vegetation from your property.
All this stuff that's ordinary combustibles from plastics and a garbage can over there and old lumber and the weeds that I cut down because the fire department told me to cut those down last year, but I'll just put them on the side of my house. Is that a fire hazard right next to the house? Does that have flash fuels and other rated fuels that could start to consume and create a big fire that would produce enough radiant or conductive heat to ignite the home that's literally right next to that garbage can over there? That's a fire code violation. You should not have a collection of combustible waste, debris, weeds, grasses, wood, etc. that presents an imminent fire hazard.
Maintain roadside clearances.
Here is an excellent example of creating and maintaining a roadside clearance. One of the most common causes of wildfire is an ignition source adjacent to a roadway. It could be an automobile accident, downed power lines, or a cigarette thrown from a moving vehicle. By clearing the roadside of brush, we are reducing the opportunity for a fire to occur.
Pay attention and plan ahead. Comply with red flag days. Learn what they mean and what not to do on those days. Watch for fire danger signs and report any concerns.
Red flag days occur quite frequently in the months of August, September, October, and even into November. On red flag days, public service announcements will be made through the local news media, warning citizens that it is extreme fire danger. It'll also be posted on our signs, and a large red flag will be displayed on the flagpoles at our local fire stations. When these signs indicate high or very high or extreme, residents have to be cautious about what activities they do on their properties. This means no use of gas-powered lawnmowers, weed eaters, chainsaws, construction tools with metal blades that could cause sparks, no outdoor burning, no use of charcoal barbecues. All that activity must stop.
Keep roadways clear. Our roads in the hills are very narrow. During a fire or medical emergency, our fire engines need open road access to respond quickly and safely. Please keep the roadway clear. And please park as if your life or the life of someone you love depends on it. Report abandoned vehicles or those obstructing access to fire hydrants to 510-238-3099. Make sure your address is visible from the street in both directions. You do not want to hear the fire engine drive past your home when you need them the most.
This is an example of proper identification of a residential property for emergency response. The California Fire Code requires that your address numbers be visible to first responders in the event of an emergency. The code requires that address numbers be at least 4 inches high, in contrasting color to their background, visible from 100 feet on approach in any direction. This allows firefighters, police officers, and medics to respond to your home quickly when an emergency is occurring.
Make sure any hydrants in your neighborhood are visible and easily accessible. To report hydrant issues, please call 510-444-3322 or 510-238-4000. You and the Oakland Fire Department can prepare for and prevent future wildfire events. Together, we can protect lives and reduce potential damage. If we all chip in and do our part, we can help keep the 10,000 plus acres of the Oakland Hills safe this fire season and all year long. For more information on how to maintain your property, please go to readyforwildfire.org or call Oakland Fire Department's Fire Prevention Bureau Vegetation Management Unit at 510-238-7388. Thank you.
Okay, Doug, thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Travis Hansen, the Acting Vegetation Management Supervisor for the City of Oakland, our speaker for tonight's presentation on Remember the Ember. No, sorry, that's the wrong one. Our speaker on defensible space. Sorry, that's when you copy things from the previous thing. At any rate, Travis, you want to share your screen and go for it.
Sure. Thanks, Sue. Hello, everybody. As Sue mentioned, I am the current Acting Vegetation Management Supervisor for Vince, or in Vince's place. I'm going to touch real quick. Let me see if I can share here a little bit of what our stats were for last year as it pertains to our vegetation management inspection season. What you're looking at is a pie chart, and basically in the box there to the right of that, this is what we did collectively as a community. Approximately 81.4% of our inspections were found compliant throughout the year. And if you look at the top here, it's from the beginning of fire season, May 15th through December 15th. Approximately 12% of properties were non-compliant. Less than 1% of the properties refused us access. And we did a total of just over about 28,000 inspections during that time frame. We can touch a little bit more on that. As we get farther, or when we get into the question and answer portion of that, I'm going to go ahead and start a slideshow here. Can everybody see that? Mm-hmm. It's not in slideshow. There we go. Okay, so for tonight, March 25th, we are at the Savvy Homeowner presentation. One team, multiple stakeholders, collaboratively working together, the city to keep the city and the community safe. Council districts 1, 4, 6, and 7 all have areas located within the wildland urban interface, or our designated very high fire severity zone. OCP&R, your program manager, Doug, he is on this panel as well. Currently, the Oakland Fire Department's interim fire chief is Melinda Drayton, for those who do not know. Operations Bureau Deputy Chief Nick Luby. I am your Acting Vegetation Management Supervisor, Travis Hansen. And let's get into some of our actual codes that we use during our inspection processes. One of the main fire codes that we use in Chapter 49 for defensible space is maintaining a 30-foot fuel reduction zone around all buildings and neighboring structures. More may be required due to the steepness of your terrain. As most of you well know, the Oakland Hills tend to have very steep lots, particularly in the central portion of the hills moving north, and it tends to flatten out down towards the Grass Valley portion of our designated high fire severity zone. In the picture here to the right, you can see ground fuels such as grasses, small shrubs, dead leaves, branches should be cut and removed from the property. It is not necessary for residents to clear and maintain vegetation outside of their property lines. The picture here on the side, that was my 5-year-old. You can see they cleared the vegetation, but only what was their designated responsibility. If you are cited for 30 feet of defensible space, that doesn't mean if you only have 10 feet between you and your neighbor that we want you to clear 20 feet on their property. One of the fire codes that we implement during our inspections is address numbers. Provide street address numbers that are minimum of 4 inches in height, legible, contrasting to their background and visible from the roadway from the front of the property. As you can see in the picture here, the address numbers are there, but they're clearly obstructed by the vegetation that has grown to that. We will cite that even though it is ornamental vegetation. That ornamental vegetation needs to be maintained, and you can see by this picture so that we can clearly see the address numbers that are displayed below or behind it. Maintain 10 feet of roadside clearance. In Oakland, property owners are responsible for the vegetation essentially up to the side of the roadway. In the picture here to the side, you can see the broom and the seasonal weeds and grasses that are starting to cover up the guardrail. This could be sited in front of your property. And if it is, we're asking that you clear that for the picture on the right that would allow the minimum of 10 feet of clearance. Tree crowns extending within 10 feet of any structure shall be pruned to maintain a minimum horizontal clearance of 10 feet. It is not necessary to remove entire trees. Please prune the branches making contact with the structure, overhanging the roof, or growing underneath the eaves. The pictures here illustrate ornamental vegetation that is growing up underneath the eaves, making contact with the side of the building, and potentially even overhanging the roof line. We're not asking homeowners or property owners to remove this entire tree. It's an integral part of your landscaping. All we're asking is, according to these red lines here, is that you prune it as so far as not to cause harm to the vegetation. If it's completely overgrown, it may be required to take a significant portion of those trees back away so that we can maintain some cold air space between the home and the actual vegetation. Once we achieve that initial clearing, then maintaining that at the appropriate distances, the tree will start to fill back in and recover from it, and it will look just as beautiful as it did prior to. In this instance here, you can see that there's a window directly behind that tree. I'm fairly certain that the building department would call that an egress window, meaning that if you have a fire inside the house and you need to evacuate the home, having overgrown vegetation immediately in front of your egress route, emergency egress route, could prohibit you from actually getting out of the building and safely, and potentially could cost you or a loved one their life. So maintain the vegetation outside of those windows. If that vegetation did catch on fire and it's that close to the window could break, creating a vacuum and drawing that fire directly inside your home. Decks are considered structures. If you get cited for pruning branches away from this structure or this fire code 4907 3.1.1, that could consider this deck again, prune according to the red line in these areas, immediately adjacent to and overhanging. And again, we're not talking about major arteries of trees, large diameter branches, assuming that you remove all of the leafy type branches, the very small diameter twigs and small branches. You've eliminated the ladder fueling from that, and a fire, if it did occur at the deck, is not going to catch a big 6, 8, 10-inch diameter branch on fire, assuming the lighter items, like I said, have been removed. So prune accordingly. And in this last picture here, you can see that this ornamental vegetation, again, a tree is overhanging the roof line and within 10 feet above the roof as well. So again, those need to be cut back, pruned, maintained, illustrated by the red line here. And in the background there, you can also see that there's a chimney. Another fire code that we inspect for is all vegetation needs to be trimmed 10 feet in all directions of any stovepipe outlet. That's the one in Vince's video there, that the tree branch is literally pushing that chimney to the side. Dead wood and litter shall be regularly removed from trees. So even though the tree may be alive, eucalyptuses are notorious for this, with all of the slash and dead vegetative matter that gets hung up in the trees. In a designated very high fire severity zone or a wildland urban interface, you guys are required to clear that stuff out of the tree canopies. This prevents fuel laddering if there is a fire at ground level. Dry, cured, dead vegetative matter that is up in the tree can be easily ignited compared to green, leafy matter that is not. So please clean all of that out of the top of the tree. Juniper is another one. The juniper bushes, if you open up the top of a juniper bush and you look inside, everything underneath that top 6 inches of the bush is all brown, dried out, dead. All that stuff needs to be cleared out in order to pass your defensible space inspections. Chapter 3 of the Fire Code, general precautions against fire, accumulations of waste, paper, wood, haystacks, weeds, litter, combustible, flammable waste, or rubbish not permitted to remain on the parcel. Now, you might say this is not Chapter 49 for defensible space, but in a wildland urban interface, Chapter 3 would refer to the items that are not permitted to remain on the parcel in a designated high fire severity zone. So when you have accumulations of ordinary combustibles in a designated high fire severity zone, that is a violation of the fire code. We need you to clean that stuff up, please. Cut vegetation and refuse. Grass clippings and wood chippings or mulch are permitted. There are specific depths for which those items can be. It's 12 inches for wood chippings and mulch, and 3 inches for cut grass left and laying. Now that doesn't necessarily, I'm going to go back to that real quick. This doesn't mean that if you have a hillside and it has 3 or 4 foot wild European oats, that you had a contractor come in and weed whack, that all of that, those stalks of the European all have to be raked and removed from the property. And talking about grass clippings, that stuff has been mulched. It's very small. It doesn't have a lot of mass to it. Those wild oats or seasonal weeds and grasses that are much longer, If we do have a fire, they're a lot more capable of being lifted by the winds that a wildfire can create on its own and creating spot fires out to 2, 3, 4 miles. So if you are clearing a hillside of the seasonal weeds and grasses and you're not having it mowed, if you're weed whacking it, all that needs to be raked and removed from the parcel. This was a new code for 2020. This was added by CAL FIRE and maintain all hazardous vegetation located within 10 feet of any combustible fence. In the picture here, you see we have a redwood fence and it's being kind of overtaken by, I can't tell there, that's a part of a bay tree or what it is exactly. But essentially what we're asking you to do, again, we don't want you to cut down and remove trees. What we're looking for here is to remove the seasonal weeds and grasses that are within 10 feet of that fence. And we're asking you to prune all of the light or small as far away from you as you can without caution. If we can see that there should be some cold air space between there, you just have to, as a violation, and ask you to clean that up. Weeds, grass, vine, or other growth capable of being ignited and endangering the property shall be cut and removed by the owner or occupant of the premises. And these are ground fuels. Vince stated in the video, these ground fuels need to be cut and maintained at a height of 6 inches. Depending on the steepness of the hillside, if it's a flat hillside, the lower you can go, the better. The steeper the hillside, we allow it up to 6 inches so that we can kind of mitigate some of the erosion or soil control. Ornamental vegetation. As Vince stated in the video, integral part of your landscaping, assuming that it is maintained, is not going to be cited in violation of the fire code. However, if you do have ornamental vegetation and it hasn't been maintained for a couple years and it has gone feral, it could be cited. This would be an example of an ornamental tree that was allowed to grow feral, and it needs to be pruned back off of the house. This last picture is one that is clearly allowed. Everything has been cut. It's been maintained below the roof line. We don't have anything around the chimney. This house would clearly pass. All the grass in the front for the lawn, all below 4 to 6 inches. Ornamental vegetation growing against the house is okay, provided it's not allowed to grow feral. These are examples of proper maintenance. Ground ivy, we get a lot of questions about is ground covering allowed? And yes, it is, assuming that it does not have a excessive amount of dead vegetation being collected under the canopy of the ivy. Ornamental ivy should be pruned and appropriately maintained. It should not be growing as trees. Fire prevention staff, questions can be directed to our 7388 line. You can go to the city's website, the oaklandca.gov wildfire district inspections. Websites that do not have oaklandca.gov, in its address line are not monitored or edited by the city. There have been sites in the past that the city has used that apparently we cannot get off of the internet. So if people type in like wildfire prevention, Oakland, it could be old information. So make sure that there is a ca.gov. That is the most current and updated information that we have. This is an example of what an inspection report would look like if you were marked non-compliant during your inspection. And you'll see that there's a date, there's two dates, the date the inspection report was created, and then in the first line it says on 6/24/2019 your property was inspected. As you go down, you'll see the descriptions of the violations. And then on the very back of the report, you'll see your inspection reference number, your parcel number, who the inspector was, and what your record number is. All of our record numbers, this is blocked out because it was an actual report that we actually did send to somebody's house. And then here is an example of what it looks like when we send you one that was compliant. The Acela Citizen Access Portal. A lot of people have had questions on how to navigate the portal, so this is what we're going to do over the next few minutes. This is a link directly to the page. When you type in the link that is above in blue, it will take you to this cut and pasted screen. And essentially what you're going to do from here, if you have not created an account, in the upper right hand corner you're going to click on register for an account. You'll follow the procedures to create a username, a login. You'll get verified as the ownership, and then you'll be able to do what we are about to do in following through. If you do not have an account and you would like to just search a parcel or an address, whether it's yours or whomever's, down here on the bottom where you see the data entry fields, you can type in the street address under street number, 1234, and then you can type all or a portion of the street name in this street name box and hit search, and it will bring back all of the matches for whatever you typed in that data field, and it will give you a record number and a scheduled date and time and what the current status is. You can get that information without having created an ACA account. It's not going to give you any detailed information about an inspection report because we can't just give that out without you being verified as the owner for the property you're inquiring about. Once you get an account and you log in, this is going to be the first screen that pops up. Where you're going to go from here is you're going to click on the My Records circle in the bottom right corner. And that's going to take you to any record associated with your addresses that popped up through the Alameda County Tax Assessor. So for this particular address, they have 3 records because we've had 3 inspection years within the Acela program. And if you would like to search any of the particular notices, whether they're compliance notice, notice of violations, pictures, invoices, whatever it may be, you're going to click on the red record number on the left-hand side. When you click on that red record number, in this case, we're going to click on FDV 20. That was for the inspection year 2020, 01165. And that's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. When you get to this screen, it's going to tell you what the location of the inspection was, what the parcel number is, and who the owner is and what their address. When you get here, you're going to click on Record Info, and that's going to give you a drop-down menu. When you click on Record Info, you're going to go down to Attachments. When you click on Attachments, it's going to open up all of the attachments that have been provided for that record year, FDV 20, inspection season 2020. And this is going to give you all of the documentation that we have collected for your property during that inspection year. The all-inclusive document that will give you all of the pictures that were taken, plus the inspection notice that was mailed to your property, is going to be the fire photos document. It's the third one down here on the left. If you click on that hyperlink, it will take you to a document. I don't think I put that in here. It will take you to our all-inclusive document that shows you the pictures of the violations, and where they're located, and all of the report information for that inspection. Some members of the Oakland Fire Department, Operations and Prevention, and that essentially will conclude the presentation portion of that. I will give it back to you, Sue. You're muted.
Thanks. Before we go to Q&A, we're going to have Barbara Goldenberg, who is Vice Chairman of the Firesafe Council, talk a little bit about how the different resources available to help you come into compliance. And Doug is going to share his screen with the slides, Barbara. You want to unmute yourself?
Okay. Hi, everybody. First thing I'm going to talk about is the tip sheets that OCP&R has developed. These are only a few. This is Guide 13. There are others. I just strongly suggest you just go to the website, which is at the bottom here along the bottom of this slide, Oakland CP and R, and it's not Oakland CP a doctor, and check them out. It's really good information. It's been a lot of effort put into making it really sensible. We also take questions back. If you have questions over time, just send us an email back and we'll try and clarify. Doug, anything to add on this part? Or next slide. One of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is that for a long, long time since the 91 fire, Oakland has provided those of us in the WUI, in the high hazard severity zone, I always get it mixed up, basically unlimited green waste recycling. So you can do, everybody knows what your yard waste is. You can't put plastic in with it, but you can put anything that's growing that is not, I think it can't be any bigger around than 4 or 5 inches. But in addition to what you put in your green bin, you can put branches tied up with string, not plastic string, regular string. You can buy the large brown gardening bags. You put them out every week. The other thing I do was I coordinate with my neighbors. If I've got an empty green, if I don't have anything this week, I talk to the people across the street and next door and say, you got any extra? Hey, my green bin's empty. It's an amazing benefit to me to be able to put out as much stuff as I want. And even when I hire a contractor to do some of the heavy lifting that I can't do anymore and prune things and delete, they don't have to haul it away. I can put it out and it cuts the cost of my maintaining my property. Next slide. Oh, okay. The other thing, hopefully we all know, you can put your green waste into your green bin and you can mix it up. This is part of the benefit of the city's contract with waste management. But if you can eat it, or if you took it off something you can eat, as long as it's not plastic, it can go in your green waste. It includes all food soiled paper, not the stir sticks, not the lids, but the coffee cups, filters, coffee, napkins, paper towels, pizza boxes. One of the things I do, and that's the last thing here, is not in the winter, I just put it out, but in the summer when it gets warmer, I just keep a really bad, ugly plastic bag in the freezer, put the food scraps, especially the meat scraps, and in the freezer, and then I dump the plastic bag, and then I put it back in the refrigerator. But that way, the night before it goes out, the raccoons don't come around throughout the week and find it. And when I put out the green bin, I put out the frozen food. It works for me. Next slide. The other thing I'm involved in is the Diablo Firesafe Council. And that is a combination of Alameda and Contra Costa County that's been in existence from just after the 91 fire. But one of the things that Diablo Firesafe does is it writes grant requests. And over the years, it's been very successful in getting grants from the California Firesafe Council, from PG&E, and now from CAL FIRE. And we've developed a program. We do several other things, but one of the main things we do and write grant requests for is to be able to provide cost share assistance to basically neighborhoods and each grant is up to $5,000. We ask that there be cost share in the form of either direct contribution by the neighbors. We ask that there be at least 5 people involved, hopefully 5 addresses. It can include a lot of sweat equity in there. It changes year by year based on the grantor's requirements on what we value. Sweat equity, shall we say, time spent, but it includes time spent to organize the grant, to get bids from contractors. We only pay contractors, and so you don't have to worry about there being someone in your neighborhood that might be taking advantage of this. We ask that you designate one point person, whether you want to call it a group leader or a neighborhood leader or an organizer. It can be an organization. It can be an organization with a small group of people. But as I said, we feel, and it's been validated by some of our grantors, that by you hire the contractor, we pay him, has kept it pretty darn honest. And right now we have quite a number of pending, because this last year has been tricky on organizations and providing grants. You know, PG&E's up in the air a little bit. CAL FIRE has just gone into a new grant cycle, and we've requested a fairly substantial grant from them to be able to continue $5,000 projects. And we've even put in for a couple of larger landscape project designations. We don't know what's going to happen yet. If you have a plan, if you have something, you may contact me. You can contact us through our website and ask someone to come out and look at the danger you perceive in your neighborhood, and how to put a project together. I will wear a mask. Next slide. Well, I should say, one of the things I forgot to say, there is an application. It is on, can you go back a slide, Doug, please? At our website, there is an application. It takes a little digging, and I forgot to find out exactly how to dig. But if you read page 1, there is a little link that says on it, link here, or click here to find the application and program definitions. We believe that we have, if we get the grants that we're applying for, because it's Alameda and Contra Costa County, and we don't have very many pending applications for Oakland or the East Bay Hills, that much of the new money will be able to be spent here. Contra Costa has been better organized in writing requests for assistance. So get busy, people. Okay, next slide. One of the other interesting things, and a couple of the Adopt a Spot people in Oakland have been recipients of the Diablo Firesafe grants. So you need to commit for a year, I believe it is. You can do lots of things as long as you do not plan to use electrical or gas-fired equipment. You can use, clippers and things to do neighborhood stuff. It's a good thing to get together with neighbors. The people that have done it have found, really increases the whole safety of the neighborhood just by people knowing each other and working together. And these Adopt a Spot programs seem to include a lot of bored teenagers that finally have something to do. I didn't know this one. I didn't read carefully, but you can do local cleanup for your neighborhood. You can do local cleanup for city spots, and biggies, keeping storm drains free of debris. And I would add, after that picture that was in the Vince thing, maybe cleaning off the fire hydrants so they might be able to get to them. There's a link here. It's an long time program for Oakland, and there's been lots and lots of really good things done through this program. Next slide. I'm going to leave this up for a minute or so. These are helpful places to click. I don't know if you want to just use your cell phone and take a picture of this. I think many of these will end up in, I don't know if it'll end up in the chat, and I don't know what's happening. Are we sharing this slide pack? Anyway, take a picture with your cell phone.
But we are recording, and then also we will be sending a follow-up email where we can put the links in. We weren't quite prepared with all the links that we needed to throw up today. So people can, like you said, take a picture or screenshot. And
Yep.
Also we will get those to people in a follow-up email as best we can. Thank you.
So
And you can always contact us and we'll tell you.
right. So now we'll go to questions and answers. So Doug and Jen, if you would like to offer, Doug, you can come out of the PowerPoint in a few minutes. Okay. So Doug and Jen, would you like to ask questions? And Travis and Barbara, they'll feed them to you.
Sure, I'll go ahead, Doug, since there are a couple in the chat. So there are two questions that are related. Wendy asks, some folks have overgrowth in their backyards. In the hills, why don't you check backyards? And the second question related to that is, what if your neighbor's backyard deck has trees under, next to, over, and through a wooden deck, but it cannot be seen from the front of the house? The only way to see it is from the neighbor's property. Is there any way to flag this in the Acela system so that when the fire crews do their inspections, they know to inspect for this before they give the neighbor a pass?
Yeah, excuse me. So there's not necessarily a way for us to flag it in the Acela system. the fire crews, when they are doing their defensible space inspections, should be getting a 360-degree access to the property. That's one of the first questions that pops up on their iPad. And they have to take a picture of all four sides of the house to show that, yes, we did have 360-degree access
Wow.
to the property. So if there is a issue with overgrown vegetation or violations of the fire code, they can always be directed either to me or through the wildfire prevention email, or to our vegetation management unit line, and we can create an anonymous complaint inspection. And assuming that that property is not currently in an inspection process, we will come out and do an anonymous inspection. Obviously, they'll know who we are, but they won't know who generated the complaint, and cite them accordingly. We hope to catch all that the first time around. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way some of the time. So call us, let us know, and we'll be happy to come out and take another look at it.
Thank you, Travis. And just a note, I think when you're moving your speaker around, it really clicks a lot. So maybe if it can stay still or off the zipper. Yeah, there you go. A question, somebody wants to know if the slide deck would be available of your presentation. We are recording this, but they were more interested in the slide deck.
Probably. I'll figure out how to do all that, but I don't see why not.
Okay, thank you. You can, we'll talk about that afterwards. And if Travis is able to get the slide deck to us, we will send that out also in the follow-up email. And I think that's it for now. Doug, take it away.
There's a Juniper question from Ann Henning.
Oh, okay. I will ask that before we get to Doug. Juniper, I've heard about how hazardous juniper is and how it can burn in a fire. I see towering tall heights of juniper growing in the neighborhood. Is there any violation there?
This is a tricky question, and Cheryl may be able to add something to this. There are some plants that look like juniper that aren't, so be careful what you criticize. But juniper is really horrible. There used to be online the availability of a video showing a fire in Rossmore in some of the condos, second floor condos with garages underneath. It was a fire that had caught in a stove. And the picture is the fire department and the neighbors all lined out up facing the fire, and the juniper behind them 30, 40 feet away, catching on fire and zooming up from a house fire. I have been terrified of juniper ever since. I had some lovely juniper, but I took it out. I hear it is dying in many places. Some of it has reached its lifespan. If you have it, cut it back. If you look inside, you will see that it is all that brown stuff, years worth of stuff. If you can't get it all at once and it looks ugly for a year, just go for it anyway. Get rid of it. You do not want it around your house. You do not want it touching your house under any circumstances. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a violation of the fire code, but as Barbara said, it is extremely flammable, and do what you can to get rid of it. We're not going to require it, but it is the best, safest practice.
Okay, there are a couple more questions in the chat section, but I'm going to hand it over to Doug since we have some other questions that were asked before them. Want to go ahead, Doug, and we'll try and get back to the chat ones after you're finished with yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. So this one's for Travis. For from Elizabeth. What is different this year compared with last year? I'm assuming around the inspections.
Yeah, so we're going to essentially have the same inspection process we did last year. One thing we do want to make sure that people understand, if you're marked non-compliant at your annual inspection, you, on your inspection report or on your notice of violation that's mailed, it will say that you have 30 days to provide us the picture documentation that you mitigated the issues and corrected the hazards. Your reinspection will be scheduled on day 45. So essentially, we had to pick a hard date, which is that 30 days time frame, in order for people to get us their pictures. We will accept them up to day 44, as long as it's prior to the scheduled date of your reinspection. But I can't have inspectors in the office reviewing emails and pictures on the same day that your reinspection is scheduled to be performed. So get it to us before that day 45, which is close of business on day 44. And as long as it's into the wildfire prevention email, mailed to us, and it has a postage date on it that's prior to that day 45, we will accept it, assuming that everything is good to go with those pictures. You will not be charged a reinspection fee at that point. Other than that, everything else is going to be pretty much the same. We will be starting inspections the first week of May, and the engine companies will be starting their inspections, I believe, on June 2nd.
Thank you, Travis. Next question from Andrea. Can there be vines, healthy vines, growing on a wood fence?
No.
That's a good short.
That was a no?
Is it a no?
Correct.
Okay. That was quick and easy. A question from Catherine regarding Acela. If you had an account for last year, is it still active, and do you use the same numbers?
Yes, it is active.
Great. Here's a question for, I think, Barbara. Will Waste Management pick up a less than 4-inch diameter brush generated by a professional working at your residence?
They have for me. It needs to be wrapped. It can't just be a helter-skelter pile. It needs to be all the branches lined up and tied up with twine, which is really cheap to buy. I mean, you can even use the stuff you bind up your turkey with. And they have, and it can't be any, I go with 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, because I can't handle it any bigger than that. But I think you can go even even wider than that, but it can't be any longer than 4 feet long, because it doesn't fit in the truck, right?
Yeah, Waste Management wants to make sure that if you are going to put out green waste, that it is either bagged or bundled, and you can put it out as much as you would like. Again, not in a big pile. They want to make it easy for their members to pick it up and dispose of it.
But I have used the old garbage can. I've been in this house a long time. The old garbage cans I had before Waste Management had the flip top guys. And if I have branches or contractors doing branches, we just stack them up in the garbage cans. And you have to think, the dumpers, the guys, the truck dumps. If you or your strong neighbor can't lift that garbage can that you put stuff in, it's going to still be there after they leave. So you can't put rocks, you can't put mud, but branches. And think about it. If somebody can lift it from a garbage can, or I've even used the old recycling bins. Remember when we had the yellow, green, and orange recycle bins, or yellow, blue, and orange? I stack up short branches in there, and they can be 4 inches in diameter.
Okay, I'll do a couple more and then back to you, Jen. Elizabeth asked Travis, how steep is considered steep? I think when you were talking about steep lots.
Sure. Real quick, one point of clarity for the bagged debris for waste management. It needs to be in one of the paper recyclable bags that they provide. You can get them at the hardware store. You can get them from Waste Management, but it cannot be plastics. And then as far as the steepness of terrain, this is kind of generally speaking, there's no specific language to it, but essentially if you're on a relatively flat lot, we're going to require the minimum 30 feet of defensible space. If that lot is on a slope and that slope is anywhere from 15 to 30 degrees, we're going to probably extend that defensible space out to 50 feet. And if it's anything over that, I know a lot of the parcels in the Oakland Hills are much greater than 30 degrees. We're going to extend that to the maximum that we can. And the code provides that be 100 feet or the property line, whichever is greater.
Thank you.
Whichever comes first.
Okay. Now, there are two questions regarding Caltrans properties. One from Gordon. I'll paraphrase a little bit. Talking about Caltrans required to move dead and down trees along Tunnel Road. Is your department inspecting Caltrans open spaces?
Negative. We have no jurisdictional authority over the state of California. We work very closely with Caltrans, but we ask them to do clearing, and they generally work with us in a very timely manner. But no, we do not provide inspection reports or bills, or we can't make them do anything.
You can't cite them either. Nope. Okay. Jen, do you have a couple more from the chat?
Sure.
However, as citizens, we can complain, not to the city of Oakland, but to Caltrans. And that's one of the things that's really important in all of this. Know whose jurisdiction you have a problem with. I mean, we've had a big problem many years ago with Joaquin Miller School, or no, Montero, I guess it was. And you can complain all you want to the fire department, but until you complain to the school district, nothing happens.
Okay. I'm not quite, this question might have been answered, but I wasn't, I'm not quite sure. Last year, the inspections started in June, as in May, you did empty lots. Will residential properties be inspected in May or June this year?
Yeah, so every year, the Fire Prevention Bureau starts with properties that ended the season in a non-compliant status and vacant lots. So the first 25 days of inspections will be Fire Prevention Bureau staff. That will start in May. And then the engine company residential lots, improved lots with a house or homes or whatever it may be, those properties will start again the first week of June.
Okay. Wendy comments that we see a lot of French broom growing along roadsides on hillsides, some of which is probably on city property. Why doesn't the city remove it?
The obvious answer is funding. We clear quite a bit of egress roadway. We just simply don't have enough money to clear everything, either roadside clearances or the city responsibility areas. It's either on a rotational basis, whether it's a biannually cleaning, if we can even get to it at that. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing that we run up against. We try to do all of the major egress routes, all of the Golf Links, Shepherd Canyon, Keller, portions of Snake and Skyline, Grizzly Peak. It's I wish we could do it all, unfortunately, because of the funding that disappeared with the disappearance of the WPAD. We just haven't been able to afford to clear it all.
Okay, and this is probably a related question. She was wondering also about Joaquin Miller Park and the tree die-off. What is the city able to do about that?
So the Vegetation Management Unit is only responsible for ground fuels. The city has a tree services department, and essentially we were told to stay out of trees.
This is Barbara. One of the things that Diablo Firesafe has sought funding from CAL FIRE for are such things as the die-off in Joaquin Miller Park. We understand that the city, not Parks and Recs, Tree Services Division will or has applied also to CAL FIRE to get grants to deal with this.
David Moore is the head of our Tree Services Department. Tree Services has applied for grant funding from the Diablo Firesafe Council, and the city has been awarded, I want to say it's like 45,000.
180,000.
Okay, so it's gone up.
It was for all of Oakland. It was along Mountain Boulevard, at the top of Park Boulevard, along Skyline, and some selective stuff within Joaquin Miller Park. And we really hope to leverage that in our support of Oakland, but I also am pretty sure that Oakland itself is applying for additional funding over the next year to focus on this.
And I believe, wasn't there a possibility of additional funding potentially from a different grant recipient that may or may not have used all of that?
I don't know. We met last week and I didn't hear anything new.
Okay.
But it's possible. I mean, one of the things that happens with Diablo Firesafe, in all transparency, is we make approvals of small neighborhood grant requests. And sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to wait for next year. You know, we're just going to do it. We ramp up interest in the neighborhood. We find a good contractor and we do it ourselves. So when we are out saying, okay, you're next, they say, oh, we already did it. And so we've accumulated those over time. And when things like the die-off in Oakland came to our attention, and you know, Vince and Friends of Cecil Creek, Wendy, John Braga, who's another Oakland resident who takes lots of pictures of dying trees and has done some major elimination of problems. That problem is now becoming national, or at least statewide, in its investigation of what's happening with the acacia, with the Monterey pines, with eucalyptus, because there are patches all over, not just Oakland, you know, Belmont, Marin County, down near San Jose, further down in Alameda County, of unexplained so far die-off of big clumps or stands of multiple species. And there's some suspicion going that that's happening in the junipers too, because Santa Rosa is seeing juniper die-off unprecedented. And in fact, I think I should say Sonoma County. Santa Rosa has mandated that if you're in the city limits, as I understand it, by a year from now, by July 1st, 2022, all juniper must be removed from your property. It's dying, and they have come up with no other way to get rid of it all except to say it must be gone. So we have to watch this species die off. It's a big problem.
We have about about 10 more minutes for questions. So Doug, you want to go look at the Q&A again and see what else you can cover here?
Yeah, a couple more questions. One from Pam. There are 2 large dead trees on a boundary with a neighbor who is not easy to work with. Is she legally required to share the cost of cutting them down?
That is a good question. So if the tree's growing out of the ground, literally on the property line, I would be inclined to say that, yeah, each responsible party would be required to, split the cost for what's on their side of that property line. However, the fire department is not going to get in the middle of disputing neighbors to be the intermediary or whatever may be necessary. Disputes between private property owners are just that. We try to steer clear of it, especially when it relates to trees.
Okay. Here's a question from Mary. Irrigated, maintained vines are an important part of some of our landscaping. Last year it was okay if the vines were maintained and deadwood was removed. This is a big deal for some of us.
Yeah, as long as they're not being allowed to grow feral, if they're not climbing other vegetation or the side of your house, absolutely, they're completely fine.
Great. And maybe one last one from Helena. What is a safe or the best height from the ground for trimming up eucalyptus tree branches and loose materials?
Vince has always preached that distance equals safety. So the more you can go, the better off you are. It has a lot to do with what ground fuel is below. But again, the fire code only provides minimum clearances. So that 6 feet or a quarter of the height of the tree is a minimum requirement. Obviously, if you can go higher, best, safest practices, the more you clear, the better off you are.
I have heard that Australia and South Africa, which has a similar problem to California with the blue gum eucalyptus, they go, I think it's 4 meters, which is real close to, 13, 14 feet. They have cheaper labor than we do. But once you get it up there, it's not coming back down. So go up another foot every year. Can't hurt.
One last question, although I'm not sure it's related to vegetation. Pam asks, what material can be put in front of windows if you're evacuating to leave the windows covered? Do you have any thoughts on that? Travis or Barbara?
You mean on the inside?
Inside or outside? Front of the windows.
I think
What's
inside
the goal? To stop the window from breaking in the case of a wildfire?
Perhaps, or excessive heat coming in.
I know one of the things you do not want is shears. I think, as I understand it, cotton, like Roman shades that are made out of cotton or drapes that are heavy, are less likely to catch fire on the inside. On the outside, you want nothing in front of that window. And you don't want anything that can blow into that window. You don't want your children's toys. If we're in a red flag area, you don't want lightweight patio furniture. You don't want anything that can blow into that window when the wind comes. And you really don't want anything growing in front of that window. The one thing I don't know anything about is awnings. Well, there's a lot of things I don't know anything about, but in terms of windows, I don't know anything about how awnings behave. They're canvas, whether they're treated or not, I don't know, but I don't want anything in front of my windows. On the inside, I think, it's one of those things. If you have a choice to fix anything in your house, one of the smartest things you can probably do is double pane your windows if you have single pane windows, and you get benefit from, fire prevention along with heat, energy reduction, both in the winter and in the summer.
Okay, Travis, do you have anything to add to that question? Otherwise, we will move on. No. Okay, so Doug, can you go back on the screen here to share, and we'll go with slide 9. Next slide. So first of all, we want to thank you all for coming, and we want you to mark your calendars for some things that are coming up. We have a program coming up on the March 23rd thing passed. Sorry about that. The Montclair Neighborhood Council March meeting is on April 8th, and we have a Firesafe Council meeting on April 17th. So, mark your calendars. Our Firesafe Council meetings are open to the public. Just you can check on our website and find out when they're being held, and then pop us an email and we'll send you the Zoom information. Next slide. Here, whoops, go back. Just to go back to the links. No, the links that we have for Oakland Firesafe Council, and okay, and the next one is our Savvy Homeowner Session 4, which is going to be on April 29th. And that's on earthquake preparedness. Mark Benthian from the Earthquake County Alliance and Director of Communications for Southern California Earthquake Center will be the speaker. So, mark your calendar. And then finally, we just want again have you know that what our links are for the Oakland Firesafe Council and for Oakland CP&R. As I said, Oakland CP&R is our outreach program. We can provide Zoom training sessions for your neighbors. One of the questions somebody said, well, how do you get your neighborhood organized? Well, if you want to organize a meeting, Doug or one of his speakers will come out on Zoom, because we're not doing face-to-face, and give you an orientation to what you can do to organize yourselves. And there's very, very good information on the site. So finally, last slide, we want to thank you for participating in our Savvy Homeowner series. And, please pass this along to your friends and neighbors. If you go to either of our websites, there's the ability to sign up for our newsletter that Jen puts together, and that will keep you in the loop. So we apologize for the glitches. We're human. We're learning how to use this system, but we thank you for hanging in here. Thank you, Travis and Barbara, because the information is really, really important. And we all have a very good evening. So thank you for coming.
And I want everybody to see the little asterisk down here. If you have renters in your neighborhood, make sure they feel included in this. It's not just for those of us who are lucky enough to own our home. Thanks for the asterisk, Sue.
Okay. So thank you all. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.